All right. I think we will start. I know has been a crazy, crazy night with the winds coming in and knocking electricity and lights flickering, but I am super happy and honored to be able to still do this roundtable discussion with you all. So attendees, welcome. I'm so happy everyone registered, and I know folks are still signing on, but we're gonna start anyway. Hopefully you get to sign on after the fact as we're still having the conversation. So welcome to the Roundtable event. I wanna give a special shout out and thank you to College Events, the Homecoming, and also co-sponsors of IDEI and really bringing this conversation together with all of us. We have some amazing, amazing panelists here today with us. It's 5 panelists, but unfortunately 2 are missing. I will mention their names in a second just because their electricity went out, and you know, hopefully they can join us later on if their electricity comes back. But with that said, I'll introduce myself. I'm the moderator and the host for tonight. My name is Sokeo Ross. I was a GA for about 1.5 years at Moore Hall. I am now the interim programs manager there at Moore Hall, and I work with some amazing fellows and undergrads, and I couldn't be happier to be where I'm at. With that said, we're gonna jump right into our program tonight and have the introductions. I'll have them introduce themselves in a bit. As of right now, I wanna mention 2 that are not here because the electricity went out due to the storm. We had Carlene Fonseca, who is the Associate Director for the Feinstein Institute for Public Service. I also know her personally, and she's an amazing, amazing woman, so hopefully she's able to jump on. Another amazing woman is Liz Lombard, the Associate Director, Employer Relations, the Center for Career Education and Professional Development. Her electricity also went out, so if they get a chance to join on, they told me they will, but as of right now, they're not gonna be joining for the conversation. So again, looking forward to see them. I wanted to give them a special shout out, so thank you for being a part of this. I will give a quick intro as to who the rest of the amazing women are, and then they will introduce themselves, right? So what we have from my screen, we have Anjel Newmann, who is the graduate assistant at the Center at Moore Hall and also a graduate student in the Urban Teaching Massive Education Program. And then we have Jacqueline Peterson, advisor to the President, Institutional Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And then we have Marta Martinez, Executive Director, Rhode Island Latino Arts, Director and Oral Historian, right? So hoping they can join on the other 2. If not, maybe we'll do another one, right? So we're just gonna start, right? So I'm gonna give it off to Anjel. What's up?
Okay, so hey everyone. It's really an amazing opportunity to be on this panel, this webinar with Jacqueline Peterson and Marta Martinez, and of course Sokeo, who we've been friends for a long time, and I have the pleasure of working with at Moore Hall under his leadership. So hey everyone, the thing about webinars is I'm such a people person, and it's hard enough on Zoom to feel connection. And with webinars, I can't see all y'all faces, but I am scanning to see who's logged on, whether I know your name or not. I'm trying to hold that as I'm having this conversation because you're really important to this conversation, and I'm happy that folks are tuning in. But I'm Anjel Newmann. I am a GA currently at the Center for Moore Hall. And I'm an urban education student in the master's program. This is my 2nd year at PC. Really excited to be here. I came to this work and really to PC by way of a long trajectory that goes back to when I was a kid, but I won't rehash all that for you right now. What I will say is that I come from a long tradition of organizing and activism in the arts. And specifically through hip hop education. I'm a child, a former young person who, you know, had the privilege of coming up through a local arts organization, AS220, a place that I still work and serve as director of programs. And through that work as a young person, through hip hop theater, got my feet wet into organizing around anti-tobacco kind of work through hip hop, through theater, through music and art. And had really through a long time of working in spaces with other young artists and my mentors at the program was developed into a position of leadership so that by the time I was like 20, 21, I was teaching in the Rhode Island Training School, which is the youth prison here in Rhode Island, and actually being able to take the education that I got as a young person at the program and then make it into my own and be able to like work in collaboration with other artists and educators to do the same. And so I have, you know, gone through that program, learned how to organize using creativity, using expression, working with young people, which brought me to College Unbound, which is where I did my undergraduate degree in organizational leadership and change. It was an amazing experience, an alternative college, for which if I didn't end up there, I don't think I would have ever been at PC because school just didn't work for me and still doesn't for the most part. But, you know, with a lot of love and mentorship from folks at College Unbound and now at PC, it's working. And after I graduated College Unbound, there was an opportunity to go to PC through a grad assistant program, fellowship, if you will, at Moore Hall. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm happy to be here. So I don't know if you want me to talk about racial justice work yet, or I can wait until other folks introduce themselves.
Yeah, we'll probably go after the introductions, but that was wonderful. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. Awesome. Jacqueline Peterson, stage is yours.
Okay, hi everyone. Jackie Peterson here. And before I actually get into why I am doing this work, I think, Sok, that you're going to say that that's going to be our next question, right? So I'm just going to introduce myself first and foremost. I have been an educator for a couple of decades. I won't say exactly how many decades, but it's been a while. And I came to Providence College after a brief retirement period as a administrator and vice president and leadership positions at several institutions in New England and on the West Coast and in upstate New York. So this has been kind of a life passion and work that I've done. And it's been great to actually be at PC and be able to bring some of those experiences and the passion and expertise to all that is happening at Providence College. And I'll talk a little bit more about my background when we, I guess, go into why we're doing this work. Thank you.
Marta, you are up.
Hi, I'm Marta Martinez, and I'm really glad to be here. Really glad to be here. I'm the executive director of Rhode Island Latino Arts, and we are going into our 31st year. I'm the founder of Rhode Island Latino Arts, so I'm going into my 31st year with this organization. And it's, you know, I can go into why I do the work later too, but we've really grown from a volunteer organization, which was myself and two other people, to a statewide organization that's doing a lot, going from learning about the Latino cultures in Rhode Island to supporting the art and culture and heritage of the Latinos. And it has to do with, you know, why I do this work. But as I said, I'm a graduate of Providence College. I left, I graduated, I left, and then I came back. I'm not from here. I was born in Mexico. I was raised in Texas. And it was just by, I don't want to say a coincidence, because I applied to PC. I wanted to come, but it was, I guess I was put here for a reason, because here I am. I've lived here much longer in Rhode Island than I did back home. And I know a lot more about Rhode Island than I know about my own home state and my own country. So, which I can talk about a little bit later, but thank you for having me.
And did we happen to mention that Marta received an honorary doctorate degree from her alma mater?
Yeah, she did. She
and,
did.
And, yeah.
Wonderful. Well deserved, obviously. So thank you so much again. Carlene and Liz couldn't make it. I'm hoping they make it on their phones, but as of right now, that's an issue with charging because there's no electricity. And I think they need their phones for certain things just in case for emergencies, as I've been told. But I know that Angel mentioned a little bit as to, you know, why do we do this kind of work and why do we believe in this work? So if you, Angel, if you can just touch a little bit more on that, and then we can pass it on to Jackie and Marta as well, to see why do you do this work and why do you keep doing this work? Because sometimes it feels as if it can drain you, and it's really, it's tough. And I know for me, sometimes I feel like I want to quit, but there is something that keeps pushing you, right? So why do you keep doing this work?
Really good question. So I don't know. There's some days where I'm so stressed and I'm like, today was one of those days. I'm not gonna front. Today was one of those days where I was like, why am I doing this? And then really quickly, I'm like, oh, for all these reasons, like this is why I'm doing it. I think for me, one of the biggest reasons that I kind of talked about and alluded to is that I'm a young person who was, I keep saying I'm a young person because I really am. I'm still in a young person, like forever. But as a young person, I was like a quote unquote problem child, right? So like I couldn't get through a day in middle school or high school without getting some type of slip, detention, suspension, whatever. Like I constantly was in trouble. And it was mostly because, it wasn't really because I was doing anything that is like bad. It was advocacy is actually what it was. I was advocating for my needs, for the needs of fellow students, and really calling out for which at the time I didn't have the words to really articulate, eloquently at least. I was calling out the injustice and the inequities that I saw in the systems in education, and that wasn't received well. And it wasn't until I went to this youth program that I keep talking about, AS220, which is more than a youth program, but I went to the youth program, which was called Broad Street Studio at the time, off of Broad Street on the south side of Providence. It wasn't until I went to that program that I began to have a language in a system for understanding what inequities I was dealing with, that my family had dealt with, that generations of my people had dealt with. And because I had that education, because I was really mentored to like understand the rage that was in my belly, right? And understand the reasons why I was getting in trouble and the reasons why, you know, we didn't have what we always needed in my house, you know, or why things felt like they were crashing down on me. It wasn't until I had that language that I became empowered to do something about it, that I understood that something that's socially constructed can be deconstructed if we understand it, right? And so I do this work because I want more young people to understand that they're not crazy. Like, they're not crazy. Like, the young people who are getting in trouble, the young people who have issues with power tripping adults who are around them, you know, in schools, and that's not all schools. I'm an educator myself. I love what we do, but let's be honest, a lot of our young people are making bad decisions because they have bad options, you know, and I want to make sure that young people know that they're not crazy, and that with a little bit of education and some work, you know, on their part, on the part of the adults in their lives, on our communities, that they can be change agents too. And I know it takes a lot of patience and energy and work to work with young people who are developing their voice. And I want to make sure that I use my energy to do that, because that's what I think this world needs. And that's definitely what our community needs. The young people know what's up. They just need the tools and the language to do something about it, and the resources to really make a change as they get older.
Can I go next?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to continue that from a different light. I grew up in a cultural community where you didn't question your parents and your culture. I knew that internally that I was restless. I knew that I wanted to do something else other than just to be at home. However, I was not brought up to talk back or to fight back. I was restless. I was at the point where I just didn't know what to do. I knew I wanted to do something with my life. I always felt there was a burning feeling. I was not just restless physically, but I just knew that there was something that I had to do. So I took it upon myself just to apply to colleges. I did, what I didn't have was mentors. The school I went to, it was a Catholic school, and it was on the border. It was in Texas, and it was on the border, and most of the kids there did not speak English. And again, I was very restless because the programming, we didn't have, it was not a challenge to be in school. There were no mentors. And so I just knew that I had to leave to find out what I wanted in life, because I didn't know. I just knew I wanted something other than what I had at the time. And I just started applying to colleges. I didn't have the money, and I couldn't afford to go to college, but I didn't care. I would send in my applications without, I mean, back then it was $50 to apply for college. I didn't have the money. I just sent the application, and they took it. I was very lucky. And PC got me a full scholarship. That's why I was able to get to PC. I got into a lot of colleges. I wanted to go to the West Coast, to Notre Dame, other places, and I just could not afford it. But PC said, sure. I don't know why. I guess it was when I got to PC, I felt like I was the first person from Texas, the first person of color, the first Latina, I should say, because there was a group of African Americans, and they were primarily the athletes. They were recruited to play basketball. I didn't identify with them, and so again, I was restless. There were no role models for me, and so I can address that later, what it was like to be on campus as the only Latina, as the only Mexican, as the only immigrant. I felt, again, very lonely. And so it was this sense of restlessness. I knew that there was something else that I needed to do. And so I just kind of pushed myself. And that's how I do it now. I get restless. I get impatient with the way things work. And I don't understand. Rather than I'm not the type that fights back. I'm the type that say, I'm going to do something about this. And I pick up the phone, and I network enough, and I know the right moment, at the right moment that I can call people and we can come together. And I've been very lucky that I can form circles and people who are very like-minded, and just jump right in. And so it's that sense of restlessness, of things have to change. We just need to do this together. I'm not a loner. I feel like I'm a magnet. Whenever I go somewhere, I always pick up people, and we just need to stick together. And then eventually we go to our corners, but I know that when the time comes that we can all come together. And that's kind of what drives me is the connecting, the people that I surround myself with, the networks that I build. And not all of us get along. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You don't need to get along with everybody that you know, because that even makes it a stronger. You have to get all points of views. Not everybody can't just be pointing in the right direction. We all kind of have to go in our different ways and then contribute. So that's what drives me is impatience with the way things are done, and a need to make it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Yeah, I can resonate with what both Angel and much of what Angel and Marta has said. For me, advocating for racial and social justice is just really part of my DNA. I'm a product of parents who are among the really hardworking civil rights activists in the 50s and the 60s. And I can so vividly remember the many nights that I spent in the basement of our local church, listening to the issues, the experiences, while my parents were meeting to discuss, the plans, the thoughts that they had for making their voices as Black people heard and valued and respected. And, I was little, but I could definitely hear this, and it would be hours of time that we would be at these meetings. One thing that I know is that my parents never shied away from difficult topics and difficult situations, ever. And they instilled that value in the three of us, my sister and my brother. I remember my father telling us of stories as we were little and growing up of, honestly, horrific experiences that he lived through as a Black man growing up in the Deep South. And this was just like, some folks would have the Three Bears. We would have the stories of Dad's experiences growing up in the Deep South. So I mean, I really heard that early and understood, wow, what an experience. Then I personally witnessed, although I may not have fully understood at the time what it was, but I witnessed the discrimination from redlining and that my parents had to endure. And this is definitely true story. I remember seeing my parents, I think I was just about 8 years old, and I remember seeing both my parents crying like babies because they had found a lending institution that was going to finance our first home. Absolutely true story. So I understood growing up, and I understand now the privilege that I had to go to college, which was as a result of my parents' sacrifices to get me and my siblings there. And I never allowed myself to take any of that for granted then and to be complacent. And I don't do that as of now. I feel it's, it's critically important to give back and to bring about change. So in my life, I'm a first generation in many aspects of life, not only in education, but in professionally, in a number of things that I have been able to and had the privilege and the access and exposure to accomplish. And these doors were made possible to me by my parents and the people like them who believed in justice, inclusion, and the right for all people to have access and to have a voice at the table. I'm always reminded of something that my mom used to say, which I believe is a quote from the Bible and other places, but she would always say, and I tell you, I do to this very day say this, to whom much is given, much is expected. And that is one of the reasons why I became an educator, to provide a platform. I felt it was a platform that provided for me to be able to impart knowledge and to share life lessons and to influence others so that they too will be at the point of giving back because of the privileges and the opportunities that they have received.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jackie, Martha, Angel. You've all mentioned some really, really amazing things. And I just want to give a quick shout out to all the attendees that are on right now. You are all amazing. And there is going to be a chance for y'all to engage as well, to ask questions towards the last 10 or 15 minutes or so of the program and this conversation and dialogue. So I got a chance to know all three of these amazing women and had a chance to talk with them and really learn from them. And hearing them today just really brings chills to my body. And a lot of you have mentioned so many different things with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what I want to focus on is within those three realms, the efforts of collaboration, conversation, and community. And how do those three things work here on campus and how you're trying to make it you know, with DEI efforts, how do we have this conversation? How do we collaborate with each other? How do we bring community together? And what programs, initiatives, or efforts, you know, respectively from your different fields, have you been doing? And again, you know, we want to make sure that that conversation is had. So any thoughts on that?
I've been actively, when I moved back to Rhode Island, I actively reached out to Providence College because I remember the time when I was there and how lonely I felt being the only Latina there. And I went to see if there were, at 20 years later, after I had graduated, to see what the mix of the college was. And, you know, it was the same. It was very few people of color. It was very disappointed. And then more recently, there's been a strong effort. It's really grown in many ways to have a diverse, to recruit more diverse students. I don't know what the makeup is of the faculty and the advisors, because to me, again, mentorship is so important. I didn't have that mentorship. I was able to get, I was back in the days when my advisor, I went to see him. It was already my second year in, my second semester in my junior year there, where he pulled up this flyer that had the word minority. They were just starting this minority program. And if it wasn't for him, and he was a white man, he was just, again, there were no mentors that I could connect with, women of color or even professors of color. But he handed me this flyer that had this minority program, and that was what kind of set me in a different path from where I was heading while I was at PC. So I do remember that. It's just that again, being lost and feeling restless, that's what was missing at PC in all these years. Mm-hmm. So I did reach out to PC, and I asked, you know, what can I do? You know, how can we get some of the students here connected with mentors? They have each other. I know that once the kids get on campus, they kind of look for each other and they hang out. That's just the nature of it. But how can we be mentors to the students? And I think that's the thing. What I look for, and I hope to contribute to PC, is that opportunity to be a mentor as a woman, as a Latina, as and as a member of the community that can, you know, offer internships or connect people, again, trying to connect the kids. So I think that's important to me, at least. Mm-hmm.
Angel, you want to go next, or I can go?
Sure. Yeah. I can definitely jump in quickly. So this is my second year here at PC, and I was not an undergrad. I didn't go to PC for undergrad. And so it's been, I think that like my existence as a student at PC is the result of a DEI effort in some ways. And I'm really appreciative of that. I think that the opportunity that I've been afforded to go to PC for free as a grad assistant is exactly the kind of opportunities that need to exist for people who cannot afford that tuition. And if we really want to change the makeup of PC or rather evolve it and make it more inclusive, then that piece around resources and opportunities needs to be addressed. And again, I think that my experience with coming into Moore Hall in having that bridge that was really created from College Unbound through Moore Hall and PC, and really through people, right? Through Adam Bush at College Unbound and Nick Longo and Sean Mukhtar, who's not with us anymore at PC, who was the director of Moore Hall and recently left. Like that collaboration and that like possibility that they created for myself, for even Sokeo, right? We followed like the same path, really. As community artists, as community organizers, to have an opportunity to step into the world of PC that has been in our backyards our whole lives, but we've never touched, is really what I think I can speak, I think for myself and Sokeo, are trying to make sure becomes systematic And it is not just an opportunity that him and I have been able to take advantage of. I'm also really like naive to like what efforts have happened at PC because I'm so new. So I think right now, the last year and a half has been me trying to learn like what has existed, what do people want to see, in really focusing on connecting young people in the center to the vibrant and beautiful arts community that we have in the city. So we've done that through like having like community yoga, or, you know, having artists come into Nick Longo's like organizing class and talk about racial equity, racial justice kind of work. I know Sokeo's done the urban dance series, but really about trying to like kind of break down the barriers from the Providence community to Providence College through creative arts and development, with a focus on DEI is like really what we're focused on. And the last thing I'll say is like, yeah, just trying to like step back also. Like, I'm not an undergrad, I'm a grad student, and I think my role has been to try to hold space and make space for the undergrads as well, and support what they want to do as they come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can really appreciate all that you said. You know, I think why it's important to do this work at PC. And I would say, first of all diversity and inclusion enriches the educational experience. We are an educational institution at Providence College. Second, I would say that equity ensures that every student at Providence College has what is needed to thrive. And third, and I think this is really, quite frankly, my very deep belief, is that institutions of higher education, as PC is, and all other institutions have an obligation, a straight up obligation to educate and prepare the leaders for tomorrow. And, you know, to me, it's as simple as that. And just as this college prepares scientists, lawyers, social workers, educators, business leaders, etc., to the very best of their ability to prepare these individuals to be successful, there is an equal obligation to prepare students to be successful, to participate in a multicultural world, because that's what it is. In the story, demographics has shown us that. We have been told since a decade ago that the 2020 demographics were going to be this. And as educators and as institutions in higher education, this is a responsibility. And my feeling is strongly that as a student, that if you don't feel that you are experiencing this level of preparation around multicultural, cultural, you know, responsiveness and awareness, etc., then you just might want to ask for your money back. Okay? I'm serious. Okay, because if we tried to prepare you to be a scientist and you went out there and it didn't work, you didn't get the proper preparation, what would you say to an institution? And this is equally as important.
I mean, absolutely. So I'm hearing every one of you and Angel mentioning the collaborative efforts of DI and bringing students of color, and also, you know, how is this, you know, Jackie speaking about welcoming, and then Marta being the only Latina on campus. You know, how is this, how are you supposed to welcome students? And, you know, I'm specifically at Moore Hall, when I came to Moore Hall, it was, you know, I came through the same efforts that, the collaborative DEI efforts that Angel went through. But, you know, as myself, I am, you know, I came here as a refugee, a family survivor of genocide, you know, and living in a gang neighborhood. It's like, where is the access, where are the resources? I thought the normalcies was gang life. I thought that was everywhere, you know? So, and then there were times where I was like, I would never make it. I would never live to see this day. I would never be on, I mean, for me, PC was this prestigious campus. that I would never, or Harvard or Yale, whatever the case may be, that I would never step foot on because I don't belong there, right? So as a community and having conversation, these collaborative efforts, how do we make this welcoming for students like Angel, myself, like Marta, right? How do we make this welcoming for everybody to come onto campus and say, hey, you know what? Your narrative is your narrative. Your biggest protest is going to be you saying who you are, right? Without the negative narratives of society, and making sure that you are welcomed in this campus, on this campus, right? And making sure that, you know what, I belong here too. So what are some thoughts, even if thinking creatively, like with what we just spoke about, how do we mention that here on PC and also the surrounding communities? Because we're, PC, it's in this little spot right here. And then everybody else that Angel mentioned and Marta also mentioned. So how do we do that? You know, is it mentorship? Is it welcoming other artists, educators from the outside to collaborate with us and have conversations, and being in students like classes like Nick Longo, and, you know, running community dance series or yoga? What are your thoughts about how we make this more welcoming for our students?
I think that all of those, you know, everything that we've mentioned are important aspects, but I think we have to start someplace where I truly think right now that Providence College is not there, and as other colleges, you know, may not be, and that is with this notion of collective ownership. Okay. This isn't one person's responsibility. It isn't totally the leadership's responsibility, although these things need to start. Clearly, they need to start from the leadership, and they need to start from the climate and the values that the leadership at any institution espouse. But at the end of the day, it's not one individual's, one group, etc's responsibility. It is a collective ownership. And that is what I think is one of the biggest challenges that we face at Providence College. People buying in and saying, we got to get to this point. We really all have a very, very similar end goal in mind. And even if we have different ways that we might want to reach that goal, we need to come together, have conversation, collaborate, partner, bring our different experiences, expertise, perspectives, etc., to say, okay, now let's see, we brought all this to the table. Let's see how we can move this forward and get to this collective goal. So collective ownership, I feel, is the only way that we're going to make a difference.
And I think part of that collective, I know we've all said it, but the people outside of PC is a very important piece. I mean, the stories I'm hearing from those of you and Angel and maybe Sokeo, you knew that there was this place up on the hill called Providence College, but you never knew what it was all about. That's because you'd never been on campus. So I think that's the effort, is to bring those, you know, that voice, the community voice on campus, so that, you know, to represent that collective, to add to the collective. I mean, it can't all just be those who are on campus, because PC is part of the community. Students come here, I mean, and now it's more of a global school. Again, when I came, it wasn't. It was very New England centered. And again, that's where I felt different. I was outside of New England. But it seems like there are more kids coming from all over the country. And they come with, again, that, you know, is there, what's out there outside of those gates? And because of where PC is located, it's not difficult, but it's, you know, kids don't tend to venture. So I think if we can help some of the community members come onto the campus and guide the students out and get to know the community, and then explore the arts and explore what the state has to offer. And I want to also mention that you know, with Rhode Island being so small, I mean, we also need to show kids what's outside of Providence, because there's so much out there that some of the kids can connect to, places like Central Falls and Woonsocket. I think I would have connected to those neighborhoods much more than I did at the time, and even now to you know, Elmhurst and the neighborhood just around PC, because that's really not what the community is. The community is beyond that. So part of that puzzle is to connect the community, people outside of the community to PC, and to get the kids out off the campus.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said, and I think yeah, the key word is about collective, right? And collective voice, collective decisions, but I think it's really about collective vision too, right? Like it's about, I think, the PC community like making a decision. Like, do we want, like, let's talk about legacy. Do we want a legacy of an ivory tower that, you know, shuts people out, that, you know, adds to gentrification in our city, that, you know, is helping to add to a legacy of like over policing in neighborhoods that our students of color are coming from, whether it's in our state or like communities that they came from in other states? Do we want to add to that legacy? Or do we want to have a legacy of a campus that's open in a tower that, you know, whose gates lower for the community, a space where young people from Smith Hill can walk in and have a picnic on our lawn? It's green as hell, so we might as well, right? You know, like can we change what the legacy like is? And I think that from what I've heard from the people that I've met in my short time at PC, like I think people want that, and that's really inspiring. I don't think I would have like chosen to come to PC if I heard different. I think that we're so kind of like, we think about institutions and organizations as like a set of written policies, bricks and mortar, and like inanimate objects, but organizations and institutions are people. You know what I mean? They're people, and the people who I know at PC want to see this happen. And I think that it's really hard and lifelong work. And like Marta and like Jackie said, it takes a lot of people, not just one or one group, but it takes a commitment to change over lifetimes, right? And I think what that takes is like investment. It takes resources. It takes leveraging networks in politics in and outside of PC. And I also think it really does take having a common definition of racism, like the work that I do and come from. I'm a trainer in training with the People's Institute from New Orleans. And that's one of the major things I learned was like, you know, if we're all trying to operate on a patient, but no one agreed on what the issue is, we're not going to be effective in treating the issue. And so I do think that it's really about like, you know, I know diversity, equity, inclusion means more than just race, but for me in the work that I do, race is the bedrock of this country, and racism is the bedrock that needs to be dealt with. And until we have a common definition and understand the multiple dimensions of racism and understand that we're not just like, to be honest, I don't really care if you like me or not based on my skin. What I care about is the policies that you put in place that are based on your racial prejudice. That's what I care about, you know? I think until we get together and understand that, which I know and believe to be the work that Jackie and DEI in institutional diversity is doing, I think that's the kind of work we need to do, versus just the kind of like, we want more kids of color on campus. That's for optics. That's not changing anything. We need to change systems. And I'm really excited to be a part of a group that seems to be doing that.
Absolutely. You know, it's sometimes I'm speechless when I listen to you guys and well, to you ladies, and I'm just sitting here taking everything in. Just to mention a few things for the attendees, I just sent out 2 links. One of them, either, I think they both work, is to a survey for tonight. And if you guys can just get on there and just do the survey quickly for us, that'd be wonderful. And we thank you in advance. We are going to open up this for a Q&A section. So if you have any questions, please send it to us during the Q&A side, and we will do our best to answer them. But if we don't have any questions, we're going to keep the conversation going, as I find this very fruitful and amazing as to hear your ideologies and your perceptions as an EDI collaboration, you know, connection, this work with trying to bring people in. And also from an artist perspective, I was an artist first and foremost. And I know Angel is, and I consider you, Jackie, and also I know I spoke with you too, Marta, and I consider you an artist and you're doing amazing, amazing work. Like, what we do as artists, our art is our healing, right? So a lot of the times that we're going through so many different things, as we're creating, the process of creation is healing, but also the process of collaboration is also healing in itself. When you get a chance to work with others with the same, or not even the same, but similar ideologies that work towards a common goal. I think what I would love for you all to speak about is, how do we get to this community healing? And I would like you to speak from your own perspectives as whether an artist or an artist at PC or administration on PC or IDEI or, Latino arts and, whatever the case may be, is how do we get to this community healing? Not just for the beloved community here on PC, but also for the surrounding community so we can come to that kind of consensus as we're here as the people too. Because outside of PC, we have the House of Glitter, we have Chad Brown, we have all these other places that are just, right there, literally minutes away. Mm-hmm. How do we build that? How do we have this community healing with each other? Any one of y'all can take that. So.
I mean, I can jump in, because it does remind me of a lot of the work that you do, with your trauma-informed practices. And I think the thing that I keep on learning over and over again in many different ways is that you can't heal from a lie. And so what that means, and there's lots of levels to like lies and revisionist history. And I think that what it comes down to is like confronting and acknowledging and saying like, we have problems that we need to fix, and this is the history of these problems. And this is like how it is, part of us, like as an institution being embedded in a city, in a state, in a country, in a globe that has a huge problem with race. And it's not just the institution, right? It's not that it's just like a bad institution that's like doing like terrible work. It's like, no, like we are the water we swim in. We come from a racially constructed society and country. And there's no wonder why we have systemic issues. So I think that it's really about, we have to confront the past so we can start the healing process, because you can't try to heal without acknowledging what the actual issues are. And I do think the arts are a beautiful way to do that. And I know for some people that's through fitness, for some people that's through writing or food even, right? But like, I do think that community arts, and especially in the creative capital, that there's a way to do that in such a beautiful way if we can bring community partners in to PC to help with that.
For me, it's cultural connections, and that's what drew me into the work I do. I do struggle with the question, are you an artist or not? Because I don't consider myself an artist, and some people convince me sometimes I am, and then I convince myself I'm not. But I'm a cultural collaborator, I should say, because to me it comes from my culture, and my art is my culture, my cultural is my art, and for me it was that yearning to connect when I first moved here, and anywhere I go, it's like, where are the people like me? Where are the other Mexicans? Where are the people who speak Spanish? Where are the people who eat the same food I do? And that's what I usually do. Like in terms of going on a campus, I connect with some of the Latinos, and I'm like, okay, let's go out and let's have lunch and let's have empanadas, and I'll show you where you can buy your plátanos, and I'll show you where you can, go and just stand in the street and speak Spanish. And I find that, or go to mass. There's a lot of the kids on PC who were looking for a mass in Spanish, and so it was something and just that simple. They wanted to, they are Catholic, they do want to attend mass, but just to connect in something that they're familiar in their own culture. So for me, it's about cultural connections, art, culture and art, bringing the culture to the campus, but more importantly, getting the kids out there and connecting them with the places where they could be, where they can feel at home. Again, thinking to when I first came here, the Mexican community was pretty much non-existent at the time. And I never quite felt I connected. I needed tortillas, I needed chile, I needed things like that, and I couldn't find them, and I never felt whole. And again, just those, they seem very simple and mundane, but it was what makes, I think, when I do take the kids out, I see them smile, I see them relax, I see them finally say, oh, okay, I guess this could be my home. And now I know where I can go and do these things. So it's you know, it's those kinds of, you know, the art, the cultural arts to me is what, that's what I use to connect with the kids.
I think for me, I first think about relationships. I think that, you know, and I think that is very much what, you know, has been said before, what Marta and Angel are also saying. I think that relationships are the key to really bringing about change and having people to understand one another and to be willing to talk out their sameness and their difference, you know, etc. And I think with part of relationships comes what I believe in is first considering goodwill. You know, I don't know, some people might think that that's, you know, very naive, and clearly in the times in which we live, sometimes you have to second guess and say, geez, am I sure that I'm going to do that? But I really think that that is a step in the right process for building relationships. I think humility and vulnerability, in being willing to be vulnerable in situations that are hard to talk about, are all part of it. You know, so I don't know. It's really a challenge. These are not easy things, I don't think, for people to do. I think that our defenses are up so much because of experiences, because of the world and society in which we live. But if we can get to the point where we can step outside of ourselves for a moment and say, how do I craft and build these relationships and open them up so that we can really have honest, genuine conversation about what we're dealing with as a society, and what, at the end of the day, probably most people want to be able to try to resolve and achieve. And for some reason, that is definitely one of the biggest obstacles that I see that we need to figure out how to get around.
And I'd like to add that outside of, I mean, conversations are good and collaborations are good, but I think there needs to be change. It really, we need to take all those conversations and really just charge, and let's just say, we're gonna make this change. And it can't be done by yourself, it can't be done, and again, it can't be done on campus. You really have to expand your collaboration efforts. But just, it's making that change. As I said, when I left and came back 20 years later, I went on campus, it was still a white campus. It was very, you know, I really felt depressed that the campus had not changed. It has changed somewhat, but I think there really needs to be an effort to look deep inside, and let's change what the faculty looks like, the staff, let's diversify that, and just really make some deep change within PC. And it's not just bringing in more people of color, it's really committing to making the deep change that needs to happen, while, you know, aside from just providing scholarships and making change in terms of just how many people of color you have.
I agree.
I agree too, and I think, you know, I saw in one of the Q&As like just like what are the concrete things, and I think that it's like it's investment. It's also money. Like if you want to change something, like the university needs to like put a line item to it, and I don't know what that looks like, so I might be speaking out of school. I have no idea what the budget at PC looks like or what initiatives are like, how well funded they are or not. But I think that when institutions or organizations are committed to change, it means putting some money where your mouth is and like backing that up for real. And like, you know, we've seen like PC is doing an amazing job with their response to COVID and the money that I'm sure it takes to like make sure that like the campus is safe. But like, I think it's important to remember, again, for me, coming from my perspective, like racism is the original pandemic, and we need to throw just as much resources behind eradicating that, that we do to a health disease, because racism is it's a health pandemic at the end of the day. So it's like we need to put that kind of same effort and that same money into eradicating racism that we are to COVID, because at the end of the day, communities of color who are most impacted by COVID, it's not just because of the disease, it's because of racism. You know what I'm saying? And all the effects and how our health is like deteriorating before we're even born due to systematic effects of racism. So yeah, investment, you know, it's relationships, and yes, it's change, and yes, it's all of these things that need to be backed up by political will and money for a long period of time.
Absolutely. And I think I am so glad you brought up the point, Angel, about, you know, the fact that we truly are dealing with a dual pandemic here. And I think if ever, I think some of the ills of racism have come to the forefront for many people in the society, folks who were just totally maybe unaware. It is as a result of the COVID pandemic that we have been dealing with. So those two things are so incredibly intermingled, and you can't really, you can't talk about one without the other when you look at the larger picture. So I spot on, I agree.
So I think we are, you know, unfortunately, we are coming to an end, as this has to end at 8. It is 8. But I think that you all address some of the concerns and questions that were asked either in the chat or in the actual Q&A section. There is one more that I would like to get to, if you could speak briefly about. Is it still a very homogenous campus, and how does PC mobilize itself to change its legacy? What are thoughts and ideas about that as we're ending the conversation?
So if I understand you correctly, say the question again. I'm sorry.
It was from an attendee, and it's still very homogenous campus. How does PC mobilize itself to change that legacy, its legacy? And I think Father Sicard also jumped in saying that more of a comment, the college and the board of trustees are ready to commit the resources to address these issues.
I think.
Any thoughts on those?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Somebody else speak.
No, go ahead.
First of all, I think that diversity, and increasing diversity, that has been for decades something that is important to bring to the table. I think that we know that diversity brings in, it's valuable for institutions in higher education, for any type of institution, it's valuable. But I think that we've also learned that diversity is not enough. I think that we know that inclusion is critically important to make sure that those that are in the room are actually heard. And then finally, equity, means that those who are in the room have what they need to be able to serve, to thrive in that environment. So I think that that all bundles up to a sense of belonging, and whatever it takes to help individuals who are from marginalized groups, who are now part of a larger community, that is the community of Providence College. What is it going to take to help those individuals really feel a sense of belonging at the table? That is where, as Anjel said, that the resources need to be placed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it is coming to the end of our conversation. I know there are some other questions out there, and we will try to answer that as best as possible. I think this is also being recorded, so the chats will be recorded as well. And we will take your comments and your questions into consideration. There are some really good ones. Hopefully we can get through a lot of things. As of right now, just in closing, you know, it's specific at Moore Hall and being the program manager there. It's we are all about collaborative efforts and conversation and obviously of what Marta said, and really bringing these conversations to life and taking these next steps and really having some student-facing and faculty-facing initiatives and programs, and what next steps can really potentially bring that out there in the open, right? So first off, I want to thank all of you, especially the attendees, for being here and staying through this storm. I hope the storm is gone. I hope everyone here is safe, that you all have electricity and you all safe and well and being careful. Marta, you are super dope. I love having conversations with you, and I would love to have conversations more. Jackie, you already know it is. This was wonderful, wonderful learning experience for me and everybody else. Anjel, you already know, boo, this was hearing you speak. It's just like I've known you since you were 13, 14 years old, and it's just seeing your growth and, you know, this collaborative effort of everybody and going forward. So we are the community. We are the beloved community, and at PC and the external community. So we have to come to some kind of community healing, but it does take steps. It does take that effort. And as it was stated earlier, they are focused and trying to make these efforts come to life. So let's see where this change happens. And before we leave, a special big shout out to Liz, Lombard, and also Carlene, who could not make, who still do not have electricity, but we're hoping to maybe get into another conversation with you guys there. So with that said, thank you, College Events. Thank you to Homecoming.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Anjel, Marta, and thank you very much, Sok, for this. Very well done.
We will talk again soon. Thank you, guys. Beautiful.
Everyone, thank you so much.